I'd like to talk to you today about a common problem in automobiles, and that's musty odor from the air conditioning systems. While many of us have believed for many years in the automobile companies and the United States government, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, about the safety of what we were breathing in, I have information which I passed along to them many years ago indicating that the air quality from these musty odor air conditioning cars was actually toxic and harmful to people. That has been denied by the car manufacturers for many, many years, in spite of the fact that technical service bulletins, which are uh, internal guidelines for repair of such things that are supposed to be not harmful to the public, have been issued as far back as 1997 regarding the air conditioning problem. In particular, with Toyota motor sales vehicles, which are all Toyotas and Lexus vehicles sold in the United States, they've had ongoing problems that were indicated by their 1997 technical service bulletins that were retroactive back to 1992. That musty odor was being caused by microbial contamination of their air conditioning evaporators. This microbial contamination was not deemed to be harmful for some reason, in spite of the fact that I now know that Toyota has been to court many, many times with lemon laws and civil suits regarding people who are fully disabled from the exposures they've received from their Toyota products. These musty odors, which anybody who serviced a car at Lexus or Toyota is aware that they're being told that they're not that common, they're benign, it's all lies. Musty odor, as documented in the 2008 New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene report, Assessment on Remediation of Fungi in Indoor Environments, clearly states on page 18, and I'll make this available to you folks, that indoor growth of mold can lead to the production of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, also referred to as microbial VOCs. MVOCs, as they're defined as, are responsible for the musty odor when associated with mold growth. So clearly, this New York City report stipulates that the musty odor is MVOCs. Well, MVOCs might not sound like a very common term for regular folks like myself, but in reality, they're regulated by OSHA in the work environment. MVOCs, microbial volatile organic compounds, are toxic. The microbes that produce them are mold, etc., and they are growing on the HVAC system or heating ventilation system in your car. Specifically, they're growing on the evaporator. Now, why is this taking place? Very simply put, air conditioning has been utilized in automobiles as far back as, I believe, 1954. I think the Cadillac was the first one to have the air conditioning system, way before my time. The incidence of musty odor from air conditioners really was not a problem up until 1992 through all the manufacturers. Well, what happened in 1992? The federal government mandated that Freon be removed from all vehicles by 1996. Most of the vehicle manufacturers were extremely proactive and had it removed with substitute chemicals, R134, R134A, and another chemical back in the early 1990s. The substitute chemicals were not as cold as Freon, which caused a re-engineering of the evaporator system in the air conditioner. The re-engineering of the evaporator, which the evaporator only serves two purposes: it cools the air and dries it, resulted in excessive condensation developing on the evaporator, therefore making it defective. Because if it's designed to cool the air and dry the air and fails to dry the air, obviously it's defective by anybody's common sense. So what's happened is these evaporators developed condensation, mold grew on the evaporators, and other microbials meaning yeast, bacteria, single cell organisms, parasites, all kinds of different things. But the mold is the one that's the key to everybody's interest at this point. The mold that developed on these evaporators is then being blown in people's faces. Now, the average air conditioning ductwork places the vents 24 to 36 inches away from your face. This is significant because on a hot day, where do you put the vents? You put them right towards your face, and the mold is blowing in your face. That musty odor, people are taking the cars into the shop, especially, Toyota and Lexus owners, because it's very common in those vehicles. And they're being told that they need a filtration filter. Now, this could be true if your filtration filter, the filter that's designed to filter the external air coming in the vehicle, is compromised. It could give off a musty odor. That's true. But what's happening is you'll know that very quickly, because if the filter has been replaced and you still have the musty odor, that means that the filter is brand new. You've got contamination further down in the system. Normally that occurs in the evaporator or evaporator pan. Now, I'm not comparing this to vehicles that have a plugged up drain hole in the evaporator pan, which can also cause high humidity and water to build up in the system and result in the same net result with mold building up in your system. That's really not that common anymore. It is in certain models, but across the board, not. What is common is the development of mold or condensation as a result of condensation in the evaporator housing. This mold, according to Toyota internal documents, is growing on the evaporator. It can spread to the ductwork of the car and the surrounding environment or housing of the evaporator, and then it's being blown through the vents. This is common knowledge at Toyota Motor Sales. They've known about this according to their technicians and according to their paperwork as far back as 1992. Now, 1997 is very significant because they came out with two technical service bulletins, AC001 and AC002. Each of these was referenced to all the Toyota models and most of the Lexus models. And it prescribed a retroactive cleaning procedure for the evaporators back to 1992. This turned out to not solve the problem, because going some 10, 12 years later, there's a multitude of technical service bulletins that indicate that there's now a replacement evaporator. Now, what happened over those years is the evaporator manufacturers in particular began coating them with all variants of aluminum, I believe aluminum oxide, that basically is similar to what you put on your underarm deodorant. It's a antimicrobial, reduces mold growth and bacteria growth. Well, what happened with that is it didn't prevent the problem, in particular on Toyota Motor Sales vehicles, and actually caused other problems across the board in the car manufacturers. What happened was when the cars developed a musty odor, the dealers would spray a foam deodorizer or antimicrobial into the ductwork and onto the evaporator to clean them, and that was actually loosening up this aluminum oxide coating. The dust particles, white powder in particular, was then being blown through the vents, and that was also an irritant and could cause toxicity problems as well. The most significant problem, though, is the mold blowing in the vents. The mold blowing in your face is contaminating not only you, but every occupant of the vehicle. And what's happening is once you aerosol the mold spores, they become much more impactful on the human health. The New York 2008 study that I referenced really didn't seem to initiate a threat to these interiors of these houses, because there's a lot of dilution that occurs in a building based off the size and air quantity of the building. The opposite happens in a vehicle, and what they found was that as long as the mold in the buildings was not aerosol, meaning it's being blown in people's faces forcibly, that it wasn't that much of a hazard in most cases. But that's not true in an automobile. In an automobile, it is aerosol that's coming through your vents with a fan blowing it in your face. The other thing is, in contradiction to a building where there's a lot of dilution, the opposite happens in the car. Tests being done over the number of years by industrial hygienists, by Georgia State University, and by other scientists have shown that the opposite occurs in a vehicle, in that because the vehicle is such a small closed environment, the mold is being forcibly blown into people's respiratory systems, that it's actually much more dangerous, and in addition to that, it's concentrated. When you drive your vehicle, you create a low pressure area inside the vehicle, high pressure outside, because the vehicle is moving. As a result of that, the mold particles actually concentrate within the passenger compartment, and that's where the problem really lies. Now, I've spoken to people over the past 5 to 6 years. I've spoken to medical doctors, researchers, professors dealing with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, a number of different unknown root cause illnesses that people are reporting after driving these vehicles. Now, the average exposure that the people I've spoken to have documented it's about 36 to 40 hours before becoming symptomatic. That's not much time in a car because if you're commuting half an hour to work each day, which the average commute is usually longer than that in the United States, you're being exposed to, more than an hour per day. You're talking about 36 to 40 days. The symptoms that people have experienced were respiratory problems, which are very common with mold exposure or microbial contamination areas, throat, skin irritations, rashes, digestive problems, ultimately chronic fatigue, headaches, all types of digestive problems. Ultimately, most of the folks are diagnosed within a year with quote-unquote fibromyalgia. Now, I've spoken to a number of fibromyalgia researchers and read their paperwork as well. What I found is the people who have not had some type of head or neck injury that are getting this diagnosis, many of them are driving these vehicles. I had a record of approximately 20 people in a row that were in either Toyota or Mazda vehicles. Most of them, I think 17 were Toyota Motor Sales vehicles that have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia after driving the vehicle, and they continue to drive these vehicles, not knowing that they're being exposed to toxins. Well, it comes back to two things. The source, which I believe is 1992-ish, when they took Freon out of these vehicles, they re-engineered them and misengineered them. That's what's causing the condensation in the evaporator housing that's just blowing the musty odor, which is the mold. The other thing is, there's been questions about the commonality of how often this happens. Well, about a year ago, almost to the date, today, which is August 4th, 2015, I discovered online Toyota Air Conditioning and Training Course 752, L752 for Lexus. I believe there's also an online course E752. But Course 752 is a mandatory course for certification for all Lexus and Toyota or Toyota L752 Lexus certified technicians. They have to take this course. Within this course, it clearly shows that the occurrence of musty odor is a common complaint among customers, that it's caused by either dirt buildup in the evaporator housing or the filter, or microbes, meaning microbial contamination growing on the evaporator itself, and then being forcibly blown through the vents of the car. The scariest part of this is not only that Toyota defines, or Toyota Motor Sales defines microbes as just bacteria. They're not just bacteria. They've left purposely and willfully, in my opinion, left out the word mold because people are terrified of mold, especially if it's blowing in their faces, that of their families, children, etc. The bottom line is they've left out that part of it in their definition. The second thing, which in my opinion, after viewing a number of state statutes, states in this course 752 that once the problem occurs, there's no permanent repair. Their words, not mine. And that implies that they're making a car that has a common defect that once it occurs, there's no repair for it. They're leaving out the part of it that's most important, though, that it's poisoning people. They know it's poisoning people. The United States Department of Transportation knows it's poisoning people. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which is a part of the DOT, knows they're poisoning people. The DOT Office of Inspector General that I contacted last August with this information, 2014, knows that people are being poisoned and injured. And the Department of Justice should know because I forwarded that same information to the Toyota Monitor Group. Now, the Toyota Monitor Group is headed by the Cahill Law Firm in New York City with David Kelly in charge of it. David Kelly, my understanding, is a former federal prosecutor. Well, I've communicated directly with his group, multiple attorneys there, and Mr. Kelly and I have gone back and forth because Mr. Kelly is under the belief that this is a casual occurrence or casual causation between these people getting sick because they've told me, his staff has told me, many people not their words, not mine, have contacted them with complaints of injury in their Toyota and Lexus vehicles from the musty air conditioning odor. The problem people are having is that there are very few law firms that are willing to take on a company that makes almost $750 billion a year in gross income. They know the difficulty of going to court with a mold case. But they're also unaware of course 752. When I made it known to a number of large law firms in California this year in 2014 and the end of last year, a class action lawsuit was started regarding the 2012 Camry, claiming that it had a problem with musty odor, which was in fact mold and which was in fact dangerous. That lawsuit was filed, if my memory serves me correctly, March 5th of 2014. Now, they limited it to a defect in the vehicle that's unrepairable, but in fact, it's a lot worse than that. People have been fully disabled. Toyota has settled cases, and Toyota has systematically sealed those cases. When I contacted the Attorney General's office of Florida, because I figured they use the air conditioning the most, back in 2012, one of their representatives told me that all of the civil cases and all the lemon law cases regarding Toyota Motor sales, regarding defects with air conditioners, giving off musty odor that resulted in, at the very least, respiratory problems for the occupants of the cars and headaches, etc., had been systematically sealed by Toyota Motor sales. They did forward me about 16 or more cases, and I found more online of lemon law arbitrations, which are available online from the state of Florida. And those lemon law arbitrations, due to a Florida loophole, are unable to be sealed. But the end result is that's clear documentation that people have been injured. That's clear documentation that they've been sealing the cases. And I forward this on to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I forward this on to the DOT, OIG. I forward this on to the DOJ, the Toyota Monitor Group that's working for the DOJ that has access to Toyota sealed files, etc., and they've all ignored it. Just for informational purposes, the sealing of a defective automobile is illegal. According to Title 49 of the Motor Vehicle Safety Act, it is obviously required for any defect that results in death, injury, or alleged injury, even alleged injury, has a 5-day reporting period to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. If Toyota Motor Sales has systematically sealed these files to keep them out of the public's eye and also that of the Department of Transportation, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, then that, according to my understanding, would constitute a federal violation, punishable by at least $36 million fine. Now, nothing's being done about this. The government, I believe, is complicit at this point because they've known, and they've told me at NHTSA, since 1997, they've known about this problem. They've known mold was blowing in people's faces. Their excuse, they told me back in 2010, was that they believed not enough people have complained about it. The reason people haven't complained about it, I tried to explain to them, was because people don't know about it. If you go into a Toyota franchise, and I've read this throughout the country on all the Toyota consumer sites, Lexus Club of America, Prius Club of America, etc., that they're not being told that what they're breathing is toxic. They're not being told that what they're breathing is dangerous. They're being told that it's a common problem. Sometimes they're being treated like it's an anomaly. The end result is they're being told the same story. They're being told that they need to replace the filtration filter. After that's replaced, the dealer's deodorizing the car once, twice, 3 times, the problem returns because, as dictated in Course 752, it's going to return. They don't have a fix for it. But the problem is, and this is where people should be getting upset, they know you're being poisoned every time you put the air conditioner on and you're breathing in musty odor. It's not, could you be getting poisoned? If you're breathing in musty odor is defined as being caused by MVOCs. Well, they're toxic. They're regulated by OSHA in the labor workplace. They're regulated in federal and state public buildings and schools throughout the United States. The reason there's not specific regulation for automobiles is literally it's never supposed to occur in an automobile, and everybody who's in the environmental industry, is well aware that if it does occur in a closed environment where there's a fan blowing it in your face, you're pretty screwed. The end result is this. I believe that Toyota is literally poisoning people. They're doing it and they're going to continue to do it because the United States government has failed to stop them. It's up to the public. If you're driving one of these vehicles, to call the Cahill Law Firm and ask for David Kelly, to call the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and file a formal complaint. When they receive enough public outcry, maybe the co-conspirators, and that's what I call them, because if they've known, as they've told me at NHTSA since 1997, that mold was blowing in people's faces, and it's not just the people driving the cars, mind you. It's every occupant of the vehicle, pets, and most importantly, pregnant women and children. Pregnant women in these vehicles are risking the life of their unborn fetus. The bottom line is, microbial contamination is a known tetragen, meaning it causes miscarriages and birth defects. I believe it is definitely a factor in the autism rates, the asthma rates of children, etc., which have skyrocketed in the last 20 years almost. That's about the same time period that this defect has been occurring in these vehicles, mind you, since 1992. If you study the charts of how many people have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia since 1992, asthma, especially in children, and autism, the rates skyrocket. And I believe that these defective cars are a major part of the problem. Are they all the problem? Obviously not. With the fibromyalgia incidents, I believe the last chart I saw, 75% was people that suffered head and neck injury. Okay, so that's 25% of those cases. But of those 25% of the fibromyalgia cases, how many of them, in terms of diagnosis, are actually related to the automobiles? I believe a lot of them, more than half. And I also believe that the diagnosis of fibromyalgia is ridiculous. It's traumatic brain injury, as many people are aware of, because there's a change in blood flow that's been studied and verified as far back as 1996 through 2014 in people diagnosed with fibromyalgia, particularly women. And a change in the blood flow of the brain doesn't happen by itself. It happens because the brain has been impacted. And what's happening with these folks who are breathing in this musty odor, they're actually suffering traumatic brain injury in the forms of toxic encephalopathy. Now, toxic encephalopathy, good luck finding 10 doctors in the United States who can diagnose it. You've got a chance in Texas because they dealt with the Hurricane Katrina mold victims that suffered toxic encephalopathy because they're breathing, and this occurs because they're breathing in through their nose, and there's basically no blood-brain barrier. These toxins, breathing through your nose are impacting the brain. The same way a drug would do the same thing, and they're actually treating Alzheimer's patients at many universities now with inhaled medication, because the fastest way of getting anything to the brain in terms of some type of medication is inhaling it. And the same thing occurs if you're in one of these mobile gas chambers, as I refer to them. These mobile gas chambers are giving you concentrated microbial contamination that you're inhaling, and it's impacting your brain. It's that simple. And the brain controls every single organ in your body, of course, your central nervous system. And that's the problem with fibromyalgia, central nervous system. But there's other impacts as well on every major organ group from your brain, from the overstimulation of the central nervous system, which is what is occurring in these vehicles. In any case, don't rely on your family doctor. You need to see a toxicologist. You need to see a good toxicologist. Most toxicologists, unless they're familiar with automobiles, won't be able to help you because they're not aware of the problem. The problem has been covered up since 1992. Really, 97 is when the public should have been made aware of it. And it's not going to be uncovered. And you're not going to be told that what you're breathing in terms of musty odor from your air conditioner in your car is toxic until enough people complain about it. The government knows about it, believe me. I've sent them hundreds of documents, most likely. I've lost count. They've gotten testimony from mold experts, affidavits, everything. They've done nothing to address the problem. And I'm telling you folks right now that if you're getting a musty odor from your car, turn off your high vac system. Do not use it until it's repaired. If you continue to use it, it's not going to be like smoking. Like 25 years from now, you might get lung cancer. Your symptoms will occur based off of the people I've interviewed in 36 to 40 hours, and that is not a lot of time. So my advice to you is that you turn off these systems. If you have enough funds, get an industrial hygienist to come test the air quality in your car. The industrial hygienist is going to be shocked because what you're breathing in is lethal. And one last thing for the skeptics. The reason people's symptoms vary from car to car is because not the same microbials are developing in each car. You might have cladosporium in one, you might have penicillium in another, you might have a combination of different microbials in these vehicles. So the symptoms will not be exactly alike because the toxins are not exactly alike. And that makes it even more difficult. And in reference to diagnosis making it difficult, you're showing up at your doctor's office, your doctor doesn't know you've been poisoned. And they're not convinced that a car is going to get you poisoned because they've never heard of this. So it's the same analogy I give to everybody. You got bit by a rattlesnake. You went to the doctor. You never told the doctor that a rattlesnake bit you. Good luck getting treatment. That's what it's like breathing in toxic mold in your car and going to the doctor and not knowing that you've been poisoned. They cannot treat you unless they know the causation of your injury. I'm giving you the causation of your injury right now. Stop using your musty air conditioner, turn it off, take the car to the dealer, demand that it's fixed. Toyota can't fix it. The best they can do is replace the evaporator. You bought some time. They're not going to pay to replace the evaporator and the whole ductwork of your car. You're talking over $3,000. They're not going to do it per car unless the government steps in, makes them do a recall like they should have done in 1997, in my opinion. So I hope you find this video helpful to you. I've tried my best as a good citizen to alert the proper authorities to address this. They don't want to address it. One can only conclude, based off of the information that I provided you and that I have, that the government's not moving forward because they're complicit. At the very least, they're going to be embarrassed. I believe it's criminal. I believe multiple people should be charged because the people that know you're being poisoned in your car that allow you to get back into it, at the very least, it's reckless endangerment. I think it's much worse than that. I know that people are being fully disabled. Ultimately, they're getting diagnosed with cancer down the road, which is tied to mold toxins. And, they're disappearing. You don't notice them disappearing because it happens, when people go off the charts, you lose touch with them and lose track of them. The end result is you need to be aware of it. You need to do something about it. Write your congressman. I've tried everything. One person can't do it. I need your help. I need you to contact the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I need you to call the Cahill Law Firm and tell David Kelly he needs to act on this information and stop dragging his feet. Thank you for your time.